Welcome back to Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. We're reading from the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged by Christopher John Joseph, a new translation of the Gospels which gets rid of all the Jewish overlays and the lies about the apocalypse, which is a lie, complete fabrication, put in there to distort who Jesus was. I was born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church in 1957. I left when I was 16, and I took Jesus and his beautiful way of love and non-violence with me. And then I went over to the Buddhist because I knew Buddhist was a pacifist. And the Catholic Church, of course, was teaching a lie, like all the Jewish Christian churches do teach the lie, that the Jewish religion only worships one God called Yahweh, and that's the same God as Jesus. I said, no, it's not. They worship two gods. A 10-year-old can see that. Oh, no, it's only one God. I said, no, it's not. And then Jesus is coming on the clouds, and he's going to destroy all the bad people and cause sicknesses and wars and starvation. I said, oh, no, that's not Jesus, that's Satan. And that's the war god Yahweh that the Jews worship. So as any intelligent person knows who's a true Christian, but there aren't many Christians left in the world, there's only a few of us. We belong to the first church, the pacifist church that Jesus established, the way to heaven and out of this dangerous earth world of dirt. We travel towards heaven through our spiritual body of love and non-violence, which we have to manifest now, even though people hurt us and all the rest of it. But Jesus explains how to do it as Buddha did. Then I've got to clean my mind out of all hate and things and only be filled with love, and even love your enemies, as Jesus said. Turn the other cheek, as Jesus said. Pray for those who persecute you, as Jesus said. So I'm one of those Christians. I'm not a Jewish Christian like all these other people who claim to be Christians but worship the two-headed God of the Jews. You must remember they worship a stinking, filthy war god, and they've decided to call that war god not Mars, not Ares or Sekhmet, like the Egyptians, Greeks and Romans who had a filthy, stinking war god. They call this filthy, stinking war god Yahweh. Okay, they could have called it Bob, but they said Yahweh. Okay, that's their war god. Filthy, genocidal murderer. Jesus said, you're children of Satan, the war god. You do the murdering that Satan's do, that satanic war gods do. You're children of Satan. He said that. But then they got a God of love. It's the God of Pax, the Irene God of the Greeks, the Pax God of the Romans. But they had different temples. They were honest. The Jews are dishonest. They're liars. They said, we won't call this loving God Mary and our war god Bob. We'll call them both Yahweh. That way we can love each other and love to kill. Because God loves us killing. And God loves us loving us killing. It's a deceptive religion. It's a false religion because it's saying we only have one God when they're lying. They are worshipping two different gods, just like the Romans and the Greeks and the Egyptians, everybody else at the time. Now the trouble is that's poisoning the Christian religion. That's spilled over into the Christian religion, and it's slandering Jesus and slandering the loving Creator who are only love and nothing else. And Jesus said so. Her love is like the sun that rises on the good and on the evil. Her love is like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust. She's kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Unless your love is as perfect as her love, you're not getting into her world. I have to become at one with love and be a pacifist as the early Christians were, and I am. There aren't many of us left. I'm not a Jewish Christian, I never have been. So when I studied Buddhist teachings, and they were identical to Jesus, clean your mind out of all the dirty things there, and you'll find your true identity is in you, but it's covered up by dirty, filthy things. And, or, just ignorance. You don't have to be doing evil things to not know it's there. You can just be ignorant and just be enjoying all the flesh life and have lots of money or something, but you don't realise you've got a spiritual body that's going to leave, and you don't need any of that money. And in fact, if you've got too much money, you're not going to be spiritual. That's the most probable thing. So hard to get into heaven. So there's a heavenly world. How do you get there? Move into your spiritual body, because the heavenly world is spiritual. So I had to sort of redo the Gospels, which is quite stunning, really. I thought, blimey. When I went and discovered all these things in these last 5 years or so, I investigated what's been going on with the Jewish Christian churches. And I hadn't been to many different denominations. I was born into the Catholic Church, so that was all I really went to. And it turns out that some of them were just synagogues. They were just Jews. That's all they were. And Jesus was nothing but a sacrificial lamb. That was it. That was his whole role. He was a sacrificial lamb. Well, that's a Jewish ritual. It's got nothing to do with Jesus saying, listen to my words, understand them, awaken and be transformed by them into a spiritual child of love. being a, him, being a sacrificial lamb doesn't help me do that. He helps me by his words, and 17 times in the Gospels he says, it's my words that will save you if you listen to them. He doesn't say 17 times my blood's going to save you. It's not there. So these Jewish Christians are really Jewish. They've fallen into the trap of being poisoned by the Jewish old wine. Jesus said, don't mix the old wine in with this new wine. Whatever you do, you won't understand the new one, and they don't. They really don't. So that's the book, the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. But they've got charity, so don't get me wrong. All charities come through him. Jesus is charity. He is love. The divine source of his inspiration is only love and charity. That's why Christian charities allow anyone to come in. Anyone can come into a Christian charity op shop, for example. You can be a Sikh, a Buddhist, a Muslim, an atheist. They don't care, because they're set up and inspired by Jesus and his words, not Yahweh, not the Jewish religion. Forget that. You won't see many Jewish op shops where everyone's welcome, that's for sure. But Jesus, yeah, you'll see those op shops everywhere where anyone's welcome, because he is the universal child. His teachings are universal. They're inclusive, not exclusive. But Jewish Christians then made them exclusive again by becoming Jewish and worshipping Yahweh. I don't do that. I never have, and I never will. Thank heavens. That's the book. It's out now, March 2026. I think you'll find it a much more interesting translation of the Gospels. It's worth buying or getting an ebook. An ebook's cheaper. Get an ebook. At least it'll help stimulate you to think more deeply about his words. That's my goal with this translation. This is a much better translation. However, because I've cut out a lot of the Jewish overlays and all the redundant, unnecessary things, it's about his words. So all the Gospels, all the important Gospel sayings and miracles and such things are there. So he had spiritual power, but it comes from heaven. And he teaches you how to become spiritual. That's his whole. He's a spiritual teacher. So I've done my best to clarify, clear, and remove any poisonous stuff or the false things or the way they've been distorted and manipulated to pervert who he is or what he's really saying. And these Gospels, I think you'll find, are a much easier read and much more focused on his love and non-violence and how you have to become that. I mean, that was his whole message anyway, so I've tried to keep it relevant rather than go off on a tangent. He's coming back on the clouds to throw people into hell or something. I'll forget that rubbish. That's all Jewish crap. Forget that. That's Jewish rubbish put in by a Jew to destroy his identity. Rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. That's my advice. We're up to Luke, so we're reading Luke now. So I'm just putting this on YouTube for anyone who wants to just have an example of what the book's about. So if you want to buy it, you can buy it, or get an ebook, it'll be cheaper. Let's read on. Pharisee and the tax collector. I think this is Luke part 5 or 6 or something. It'll be on the initial thing when you open it up on YouTube. Luke 18:9-14. Jesus spoke this parable to some gathered there who had convinced themselves that they were more righteous than others and who looked down on them and despised them. 2 men went into the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed to our loving Creator, saying, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give contributions from all that I possess. The tax collector, standing a way off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, My loving spiritual Creator, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Author, by remembering that none of us are perfect all the time, we can feel a sense of oneness with all other children and never act in a superior way towards anyone else. This is an aspect of love in equanimity towards all. And we must always be in communication with our loving Creator, with our life on full display before her, and always acknowledge our mistakes and ask for her understanding and forgiveness. When I talk to the loving spiritual Creator and Jesus, I always say, well, look, I'm really struggling, but I know I'll do my best and I'll just keep trying. I know I'm not perfect, but I'll just try my best to get better. I'll keep trying. And so I acknowledge my own frailties, you might say, first, but then I'm determined to do better. And that's this whole thing I'm doing. I wasn't sort of keen to do this work because I thought people aren't going to like this. They're not going to like me saying this, particularly not the Jewish Christians, and Jews won't either. So I'm going to be in a real minority. I thought, do I really want to do this? And I thought, well, don't hide your light under a bushel, Chris. Stand up on the rooftop. Make it really clear. Shine the light of the truth, the loving spiritual life force that Jesus was at one with his only love. I knew that my whole life, so I really didn't have any problem with that. But you feel intimidated by these Jewish Christians when you start saying, "Listen, you've got this all wrong." Not all of it. But your charities are great. Keep them going. That's correct. You're with Jesus on that one and the loving Creator in heaven. But this other stuff you're talking about, Jesus is coming back on the clouds, that's Satan. You're teaching children that Jesus is Satan. Once you tell them that, they get really upset with you. They condemn you. I've already been condemned. I'm not going to be allowed into heaven because I've said that. But I'm not intimidated by that because they don't understand. They're brainwashed. They don't know Jesus. They don't even read his words much. They don't even look at them. They love the Jewish religion though. They love that war god. But only Jesus' children are going to be saved. It's just rubbish. So I found it quite intimidating initially to do it. And I'd never done anything like this. I'm just a gardener. I'm not a theologian. But you can find the truth. It's pretty simple. And you can look at the Greek interlinears. If you've got half a brain, you can easily sort of put it together and see where all the mistakes are. I've got half a brain. Zacchaeus' house, Luke 19, 1-9. And Jesus passed through Jericho, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was the chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see Jesus, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed into a sycamore tree to be able to see Jesus as he passed by. And when Jesus came to the tree, he looked up and saw Zacchaeus and said to him, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house." So he quickly climbed down and welcomed Jesus joyfully. But when the crowd saw this, some complained, saying, "He has gone to be a guest to eat with a man who is a sinner." Then Zacchaeus stood and said to Jesus, "Teacher, I will give half my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone falsely, I will pay back fourfold." And Jesus said, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he is also a child of our loving Creator. For I have come to seek and to save that which was lost." Author. The spiritual impact that Jesus had on many children, and still does, is to transform them into good spiritual children, inspiring them to turn away from wrongdoing. Again, Jesus clearly states, he and our loving Creator, spiritual Creator, do not condemn anyone, but only try to save them to heaven. Many Jewish Christians teach a slanderous notion that Jesus and our loving Creator will destroy her children who are lost. They are unwittingly worshipping and teaching about the violent Yahweh one war god of the Jews, not our loving Creator, who is more like the Yahweh two God of the Jews, who says to love your neighbour as yourself. I'm happy to speak about this because I can't get kicked out of any Jewish Christian church because I don't belong to one. Great. But I'm happy to go into any church because Jesus is there, so I go anywhere. But it's hard to find anyone who knows him properly, or fully. I should say fully. There are plenty of beautiful Jewish Christians, far more beautiful than me, and I've met them, and they've died and gone to heaven for sure. But they ignore the Jewish religion. They have no interest in the book of Revelation. They're only interested in him. They're like me. Jesus is sad for the Jews. Luke 19, 41, 44. As Jesus drew near to the city of Jerusalem, he wept tears and said, "If only you had known the things that would have brought you to peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you and hem you in from every side. And they will level you and your children within you to the ground. And they will not leave one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your investigation." See, the investigation Jesus is talking about is he came to show them a different understanding of God, in which case they would have had to investigate their own understanding, which was faulty, because they worshipped two different gods. And what's even worse than that, they called them by the same name, deliberately, cunningly, deceivingly, lying. So Jesus himself is sort of the truth coming into their lying religion. And that's the problem. They rejected it. Author, although the spiritual teachings of Jesus are universal, he first tried to bring his own Jewish people out of their dualistic religion, worshipping the two-headed God Yahweh, and bring them to our loving spiritual creator, who is only love. But they rejected him, which naturally would have saddened him. He predicted that they would receive the same type of brutal war god treatment to themselves that they gave to others, like the people of Jericho, where they went and slaughtered them all. Well, he was just saying the same things. You're going to get what you give. As we sow, so shall we reap. He warned them about the law of karma, or the law of consequences, or reaping as you sow. Advice for disciples, Luke 22:35-36. Jesus said to his disciples, "When I last sent you out without money bag, knapsack and sandals, did you lack anything?" They said, "Nothing." Then he said, "But now he who has a money bag, let him take it with him, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has no garment, let him sell his sword and buy one." Then they said, "Teacher, look, here are 2 swords." Jesus then said, "That is ample." Author, when the disciples were first sent out to share the new spiritual way and teachings of love and non-violence with the common Jews that Jesus taught, they received much local support and provisions along the way. But as the Jewish authorities started attacking Jesus and his new teachings, and threatened Jews with being expelled from the synagogue if they acknowledged Jesus or his followers, it was more dangerous to be seen with them. So naturally, they would need their own provisions, as they would not be getting as much support on the road as they did earlier on. All modern gospel translations say Jesus said to sell your garment to buy a sword. That's wrong. But just later on that very night, after the Last Supper, as Jesus was being taken captive and a follower cut the ear off one of the crowd, he famously said, "Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take hold of the sword will perish by the sword." Someone switched the words. A Jewish Christian did it. And they did it most likely around the time of Constantine, so that the Roman soldiers could take up a sword and go to war. That's why they did it. That's my opinion. That way, and I've met Christians who use this saying, which has been perverted and distorted deliberately. Jesus wasn't saying, sell your garment and buy a sword. He was saying, sell your sword to buy a garment, so you stay warm on the road. Because that very night, he said, anyone who lives by the sword will perish by the sword. Well, why would he say, oh, everyone go out and buy a sword now, you're going to really need a sword? Once you know Jesus, you can see these lies, so easily. But if you're a Jewish Christian, you believe this rubbish, Sorry, where were we there? I'll have to read the sentence there. Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take hold of the sword shall perish by the sword. I mean, I laugh a bit about it, but it's tragic, and it's really dangerous. Jewish Christians are being taught evil things by the Jewish Christian churches. They're not being taught the correct things. So the sword and the garment have most likely been either accidentally switched in early translations or deliberately to pervert the pacifist teaching of Jesus to allow Christians to take up the sword in battle. It may have been a mistaken translation. I'm open to that possibility. Someone's just written the words back to front. Sell your sword to buy a garment. You're on the road, you're going to have to keep warm. Well, get rid of your sword. You don't need that because we're pacifist Christians. Why do you need a sword? You're a pacifist Christian. If you pick up the sword or use it, you're going to perish. You're going to go to hell. He said that later on that night. Why would he say just before that, I'll get a sword, by the way, so you can protect yourself and kill someone who's attacking you? The words have been switched. I'm open to the possibility it was a clerical mistake in the translations because, it's all hand written. They copy it by hand under a candlelight probably or something. And it's easy for them to make a mistake. But I think it's been deliberately altered myself. Probably around the time of Constantine, when the corrupt Christian leaders of the church turned everyone to worship Yahweh, back to worship the two-headed God of the Jews. And that was when Christians became Jewish Christians. during the 4th century, they were perverted to worship the Jewish God again. It's a perversion. It's a poisoning. That's when the Christian religion was really heavily poisoned by becoming worshippers of the Yahweh Jewish God. One God being a satanic war god. So they're worshipping Satan without really knowing it. And the thing is, if they don't realise they're worshipping Satan, these Jewish Christians, by saying Yahweh is the God of Jesus, then I don't think it's any great sin or anything. As long as they don't follow what that stinking, filthy Yahweh war god tells them to do. Go and kill your enemy. I wouldn't be surprised if this switch occurred around the time of Emperor Constantine by the corrupt Christian leaders to allow Roman soldiers to go to war with the sword but still be Christians. That's why they were corrupt. The disciples' response may have been more correctly simply offering 2 swords to donate towards buying cloaks for those who had none. So you can imagine saying that anyone who needs a cloak, well, sell your sword, and if you haven't got one, well, sell your sword and buy a cloak. And you can imagine some of the disciples who have got swords, who have got cloaks, and swords or daggers. The Greek translation is sort of like dagger, but everyone had all the fishermen had daggers or knives, but for their nets, And having knives was common. You needed a knife to cut the meat and cut the food or kill the whatever, and use. It was a utensil. Sword, of course, well, that's more like a battle sword to go to war and kill with, but. Either way, what happened was he just said it. Some of the disciples said, "Oh, look, here's 2 swords, we can sell these and buy some garments for anyone who hasn't got any." And Jesus' answers is, "Oh, that'll be ample. Yeah, a couple of swords, we can buy a few garments with that for anyone who hasn't got one. Any of the disciples hasn't got one, oh, that'll be plenty. Yeah, Bob hasn't got one, and Matthew hasn't got one, and I see Thomas has lost his too. He's getting old. Oh, that'll be plenty. Those 2 swords will be plenty. We'll sell them and get some garments for them." That's most likely the truth of what happened, but it's distorted, perverted. Oh yeah, I've had Christians tell me, "Oh no, Jesus said you can carry a sword or a gun," because they transfer it into gun. These are Jewish Christians who don't know Jesus, and they worship the stinking war god Yahweh. But they've got Jesus there too, so it's complicated. They become schizophrenic. Our loving spiritual creator is only love. We must be her spiritual children of only love on earth. That is the truth, and nothing but the truth. Now that's the end of Luke, I think. Yeah, we go on to John. Okay, well, I'll end Luke there because it's just sort of like, make a clean start sort of thing. So now Luke is short only because I've already put all of Luke's parables and sayings that are also replicated in Matthew, like they're in both Gospels, and often in Mark. It's often in the 3 Gospels. I've put them all into Matthew. So Matthew is the longest chapter of the Gospels in my book, but it contains the 2 or 3 versions in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and sometimes even John perhaps, but mostly the 3 synoptics. So there might be 2 or 3 sayings that are pretty much the same in the 3 different Gospels with slight variations. Well, I've just taken them all and combined all those variations together, or I've cleaned them up to make sure they make sense and they're logical and intelligent as Jesus would want them to be, so that the message is still contained clearly and concisely and correctly. So that's why Luke is a short gospel there in my book, because all his sayings are already in Matthew's, which are the same sayings. And I put the references in the Matthew gospel where Luke and Mark's are alongside Matthew's chapter and verse. So you can look them up yourself in an ordinary Jewish Christian Bible or gospel. So the main point of Jesus' teachings is always this: you've got 2 bodies. The loving spiritual universe and the loving spiritual world, you can only go there in a spiritual body, not a body of flesh. All bodies of flesh die, rot and stink, and they're only food for the vultures, and that is exactly Jesus' words, exactly in the Gospels. He said the spiritual body leaves and is taken to be near to. Again, that is in the Gospels. They are his words. The Greek word taken literally means taken to be near to. Now, because it's been cut out of the Gospels, the answer, that's where 2 are in a single bed, 2 women grinding at a millstone, 2 are in a field, 1 is sent forth, redundant, dismissed, of no use anymore. That's what that means. They're dead. the body's dead. It's sent forth. There's nothing, no use for it anymore. Then he says the other one grinding at the millstone is taken to be near to. One in the single bed dies, sent forth, redundant, no good, useless, no life in it. The other one leaves, taken to be near to. When the disciples ask him in that beautiful dialogue, where are they, Lord? The Jewish Christians cut out the answer about going to the spiritual world. Or the only answer you'll find there is one answer to where what happens to the body of flesh. When the body of flesh dies, the one that's sent forth, that's the body of your flesh dying. Jesus said, the dead corpse of the body will be where the vultures gather. He's saying, when the body you're in that's flesh, when that dies and sent forth, dismissed, redundant, of no use anymore, that's what he's saying. In the Thomas Gospel, it's really straight in your face. Two are on a couch. One lives and one dies. That's why they wanted to get rid of the Gospel, Thomas, you see. They wanted to destroy it because they wanted to put this gobbledygook Nicene rubbish in, this Jewish overlay crap about the apocalypse and Jesus rises on the third day and all this stuff. And your dead body's going to come back when he comes back on the clouds. That's all false, lying filth to take you away from the very important message. Wake up now before you die. Become spiritual and commit to love and non-violence right now. Otherwise you won't be ready. If you don't do it now, it won't matter if he comes back on the clouds, you're still not ready. Won't matter. It's all rubbish anyway. He's telling you to get ready now. So that's his dialogue, that's his teaching, that's Buddha's too. You leave at death. Your spiritual body is taken to be near to. The Greek word is just taken. But you see, there's only one answer. Where have they gone, Lord? Oh, the body of flesh, well, that'll be where the vultures gather. There's no answer from Jesus. Where has the other one gone that's taken to be near to? There's no answer. He doesn't mention it. That's because they cut it out. That's why in my Gospels account, I put it in. I can't imagine what he said. The most logical and obvious thing he would have said was, and the body of the spirit is taken to be near our loving spiritual creator in heaven, if you're ready. But I phrased it in a way that I thought he might like. He said, the dead body of flesh will be where the vultures gather. So the way I've written it is, and the body of the spirit will be where the eagles fly, high in the sky, above. Spirit is born from above. Eagles fly high, high. One of the highest flying birds in the world, right? So high, wow. So I put that in. The body of the flesh will be where the vultures gather. The body of the spirit will be where the eagles fly. They've cut it out deliberately. You see, you've got to understand they've messed up. They've played around and distorted. And then whoever the Jew was who put in this apocalyptic lying filth and scattered a paper trail through the Gospels that leads to this stinking slander, the book of Revelation, the stinking filth, the book of Daniel, that's next to Jesus, which is a disgusting disgrace for every Jewish Catholic organisation in the world. And to teach that to children, that is just insanity. That is evil. That's satanic. You're teaching children a satanic book in the name of Jesus. It's disgusting. So, anyway, no one listens to me, so it's a bit like, the voice in the wilderness sort of thing. So I'm happy to just say what Jesus said. I believe what he said. If I don't become spiritual and a pacifist, loving child now while I'm on earth, where it's a dangerous, violent world, I will not enter heaven. But if I become a pacifist, spiritual child of love on earth and treat everyone with love, mind you, of course, I call the satanic children evil satanic children because that's the truth. I have to give them the truth. You're going to hell. Putin, Russian army, Netanyahu, Israeli army, Hamas, Ukraine, you're all going to hell. American army, Iran, you're all going to hell because you worship death. I have to speak the truth. I don't send them to hell. I don't condemn them to hell. I warn them you're going to hell. Turn back. Change. That was the whole message of Jesus. Repent. Change your mind. That's what it means. Change the way you're thinking. Repent means to change the way you're thinking. Go back. As Jesus said, go back to when you were like a little child, innocent. Putin wasn't murdering anyone when he was at kindergarten. Netanyahu and the Israeli army and the Russian army, none of those little kiddies when they were 3 years old were murdering anyone. They are now because they've become satanic. They've moved out of their spiritual body into a fake, false shadow. Evil, filthy stink. They're stinking up the world. And the children who supply them with guns and bombs, they're stinking up the world with their satanic filth. I'm not a part of that, and I never will be, and I don't support it in any way whatsoever. Our Australian government's buying nuclear submarines which are going to have armaments on them, or missiles or torpedoes, or whatever stinking filth they got on it. We've got homeless people on the street, elderly people in nursing homes who aren't being cared for properly. We should have a flotilla of boats that go around the world with government employees on it, like an army of farmers, engineers, medical people, nurses, doctors, people who can build bridges, who can build prefab homes. We should have all our flotilla of Army, Navy, aircraft carrier bullshit, bloody crap. They should be all a flotilla of wonderful, loving things that we pay for. Because, I mean, if we're paying billions of dollars for stinking, filthy, satanic submarines, why not spend billions of dollars on things that are going to help a nation, help poor people, go to a war-torn country and provide food and shelter? Won't that have a better effect than just buying more stinking, filthy, satanic bombs? Don't you get it? You're insane. You are mentally deranged, spiritually insane. Killing won't get you to heaven. You're going to die anyway. Bring love to earth and risk it. If you don't risk love, if you buy guns and bombs, you're just working for Satan. I'll leave you with that little message. So Jesus was a pacifist. I'm a pacifist Christian. I belong to the original church. I'd love anyone to contact me. I'd love to find another. The Assyrian Christians, I've spoken to an Assyrian Christian, they also agree the book of Revelation is a load of crap, but they leave it there in the Bible because it's sort of always in the Bible, but they don't read it out in their churches. They understand it's bullshit. And they also believe the God Yahweh is not the God of Jesus. That's the Assyrian Christians. And in fact, I think they're the only Jewish Christian group who are the most least Jewish. They know Yahweh's not the God of Jesus. They know that. And so the Assyrian Christians could be one of the last remaining sort of closest Christian church on the planet. They're pacifists. They know the book of Revelation is a load of crap. And they know Yahweh's not the true God of Jesus. Well, they're like me. But I'm much clearer on it, and I speak out about it. Whereas they tend to stay a bit quiet about it. I'm on the rooftop. Shouting out what I hear in my ear that Jesus tells me. I'm just love and non-violence, Chris. Tell him. Okay. And what about the loving spiritual creator? Oh, she's only love and non-violence too, Chris. Okay, I'll tell him. How do I get into heaven? You have to become love and non-violence, Chris. Oh, okay, I'll try and do that. Thanks. No worries, we're with you. The world will be against you though. I said, yeah, I know. Love your way to heaven. Hate your way to hell. It's your choice.